interview, we can get to some of those questions. We'll try to keep the chat sort of as silent as possible because for the panelists, it can be a little bit distracting. But we'll pull up that Q&A quote box at the end of the interview, and then if there is time, we can answer your questions there. I think we can get started. People will join in as they join, but we've got a pretty good attendance right now. So I will sign off, and I will let you guys enjoy the show and have fun. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
All right, there she is, Christina in charge. There's Kia Nurse. I'm assuming Kia in Hamilton tonight. Is that where you are?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were going to have this big dinner here in Nova Scotia back on April 1st called Women on Top of the World. And you had been so kind to say, yeah, I'll come. And we had to cancel. And so we're hoping we can get you back at some point. But thank you for doing this kind of in place. And I know there's basketball fans all across Nova Scotia who are tuned in. I want to start tonight. I want to name a family member of yours for you.
Okay.
And then you tell me how good an athlete this person is, was, or continues to be, okay?
Okay, yep.
Your mom, Kathy.
She was, from what I'm told, before my time, obviously, a basketball player, University of McMaster. She was known as a bruiser, so she was one of those players who went out there, set a hard screen if you needed one, and she had a pretty deadly short corner shot from what I've heard.
All right, your dad, Richard.
CFL player, played a little bit of everything, hockey, football, lacrosse, very competitive. That's where I get all my competitiveness from. But he was my coach actually for basketball my entire life and my sister's entire life. So he was pretty good. He's still pretty heavily involved in the sport.
You mentioned your sister, Tamika. What about her?
Yeah, she was a college basketball player at the University of Oregon, then transferred to the University of Bowling Green. She was my Michael Jordan. She's 9 years older than me. So I thought she was everything in the world that a basketball player could be. And I think she still could have it in her.
Your brother, Darnell.
Yeah, Darnell is only a year older than me. So people say that we grew up kind of like twins. He is an NHL player for the Edmonton Oilers. Still in our immediate family, the current highest drafted player ever at 7th overall. And he's still doing his thing in the league. And he's a pretty good athlete and an even better person.
Your cousin, Sarah.
Sarah, same age as Darnell. So for some reason, that age group in our family went to hockey. She is an Olympic silver medalist with the Canadian women's national team playing ice hockey. She's still doing her thing out there too. So it's fun to be around her. And
a final one here, your uncle, Donovan.
Yep. Uncle Donovan McNabb, a long-time NFL quarterback, Pro Bowler, an inspiration to so many people, including myself. So he's not in the game anymore, but I think he's still got something in him.
Listen, with all of that around you, did you have any choice but to play sports as a kid?
Not a whole lot of choice. I think obviously our parents wanted to keep us really busy. And because we had a lot of energy and they had 2 little ones with me and my brother only being a year apart, you know, when I was first born, I was brought to the gym because both my parents were coaching my sister's basketball team at the time. So I kind of just gravitated to basketball because I'd seen her do it so often. But I started in soccer. That was my first sport. I was 3 and just kind of ran around in circles. I started basketball when I was 4, and then I ran track and field, cross country. I played flag football, a little bit of everything, but I loved sports.
What's your earliest really clear memory of playing basketball?
I played for Hamilton Transway here in Ontario, and they have this house league. So you can start when you're 4. And my mom was an original Hamilton Transway basketball player, and my dad's been a coach there since my sister started. So it's pretty much in the family, and they put me in that. And I closed my eyes to shoot on the 6-foot rims because I couldn't get it to the 10-foot rims, obviously, but we had these little ones. We were called the mini-me's. And I just remember how hard it was to get it in the 6-foot rim and how excited I was when I finally did. But I closed my eyes every time I shot it.
What about an early memory of not just playing basketball, but perhaps realizing that you weren't too bad at the sport?
Yeah, that took a while. I still sometimes have to remind myself that I'm okay. Like, I'm a pretty good basketball player. But I think one of the really exciting parts was our first Ontario basketball kind of session when I played the nationals like anybody else. And for me making that team in Ontario, that was kind of like, I'm probably pretty good at this sport.
Who were your favorite players growing up, male or female?
I was big on, obviously, my sister. You know, we in Canada didn't really get to see a lot of players like, you know, young players get to do now, which is a great thing, just on television, especially on the women's side. But for some reason, one day I saw Maya Moore playing on ESPN, and I was like, oh, she's cool. I want to be like her. So she was a big reason why I wanted to go to UConn. She was a big reason why I wanted or knew about a WNBA team. And then on the men's side, obviously Vince Carter was up there.
You mentioned UConn. That's obviously one of the most desired universities for a female basketball player in the world, maybe the most, with a great coach in Gino Auriemma. For people who don't know the story, how did they find you and you find them?
Yeah, it was really weird actually how it happened. You know, for a long time, people, and they say it now even more, they kept saying you have to go to a prep school in the States, that'll get you to university there if that's what you want to do. And I talked to my family about it, and I was like, does this make sense? And my dad always said to me, if you're good enough, they'll find you no matter where you are. You don't got to go move away from home to do that. So I stayed here in Hamilton for my entire career. I played a couple games in the States just in the summertime with my friends from Translate, and we played some AAU games. And I actually was on my way back from China with the national team one day. I already went down to 3 schools in my recruiting, and my dad called me and he was like, you want to play one more tournament? Your friends are playing, just enjoy it. I was like, cool, yeah. So we went to Washington, we played a tournament, and we were just out there destroying teams. And coaches came around to see us play. They wanted to see what us Canadians were about. And then all of a sudden, all the big schools came into the recruiting process, and I was like, oh, this is really late. So I had to reopen it all up again, and that's kind of how they came into play.
This Auriemma fella, I've read a lot about him and met him at a couple of Olympic Games. How tough of a coach is he? What kind of a coach is he?
He's a challenging coach. I think what I really thrive on as a basketball player is being challenged and being able to prove people wrong with how I play. And that's the kind of coach that he is. So that's why me and him kind of got along in that sense. He's demanding in the sense of you're chasing perfection, but he knows you're probably not going to get perfection, but you're going to get as close as you have to. What makes him really, really great at what he does is, one, he knows how to make a player tick. So he knows how to make you mad and challenge you to get you to want to show him off and show him up. So, you know, I'm on the court, watch me, I can do this. You tell me I can't make a left-handed pass, I'll go out and make a left-handed pass. But as soon as you do it, he finds something new. He's like, okay, well, you missed that player on the right side trying to make that left-handed pass. You're like, well, I did what you just told me to do, and I proved you wrong, but I could have done this. And that's what makes him as good as he is, because he doesn't let you settle to be average.
I missed a little bit there. I think your internet froze up. But with regard to him, you won 2 NCAA championships under him.
Oh, yeah.
What's that feeling like to win an NCAA championship? I think she's all frozen up, folks. Oh, no, she's back on. She's back on. You're good. Okay, listen, I'm going to ask you that one again. We were talking about Gino. Oh, she's all frozen again. The vagaries of the internet, ladies and gentlemen. It's not always easy. I'll go back to my quarterback, Christina.
The Wi-Fi is not
she back on?
Let's see if I can get you on my phone.
There you are.
I know. It's actually the worst.
We can see and hear you now, actually.
Can you see me?
You're
I
back.
can see you guys. I just can't hear you. Hang on. I'm going to put you on here. Can you hear me on this?
Yes. Yeah, you look good too. It's perfect.
My phone is always better than my iPad for some reason.
You got to figure there's so many people on the web at night that it's amazing we're getting through it all. So I'm going to ask you another question here. University of Connecticut, as a student athlete, I'm sure a lot of people on the call tonight would love to hear how regimented it was and what the structure was in terms of how many hours of court time per day, how many hours of study. How did you make it work?
Yeah, so for the most part in our typical schedule, we would lift in the morning. So depending on what your class schedule was, there was 3 different lift times, and they were between 8 and 10 a.m. So you could come in anytime then, do your lift, and then be at class on time. And then we would always typically be done our classes by, I think at the latest 1:15, 1:30. And we would practice from 2 to about, depending on the day, 4:30. 5-ish. It depended on what the day was and what we were going through. And then afterwards you had, as a freshman, mandatory study hall. So you would be in study hall from 7 to 9, or from 8 to 10. So you had 2 hours mandatory. And then you were done. So that was kind of our day in a nutshell. It repeated itself for the 5 weekdays. And then on the weekends, obviously you had a little bit more time. But as long as you kept up with a certain GPA, then you could get out of study hall in your second year. So then it was optional. If you need to come in, or if you had tutors, you came into your tutors at those times. So, I think what they did there for us was really put you in a position to be successful. They gave you all the tools, right? They said, if you want a tutor, tell us, we'll get you a tutor. Here's your class schedule. It's what you want to do. It's the academics that you want to learn. Go to class. Just be smart about it. Go to class. So it was really about being where you needed to be at the time you needed to be. So having that accountability, and then learning in your first year, study hall is mandatory so that you learn how to manage your time. So that's kind of what was big for me, was being able to say, okay, I'm done now from 5 o'clock after practice in my junior year or my senior year. I go back home. I can't just sit down at the TV and watch whatever I'm doing. Let me finish my work or get ahead of my work. And then when I'm on the road, or if we have a game on a weekend at a weird time, I know all my papers are going to be in on time. So that was kind of the big part, was just being able to manage your time.
Can you paint a picture of how big women's basketball is at the University of Connecticut?
Yeah, it's huge. We sold out pretty much every single game that we played at home. And we had 2 stadiums. One was 10,000 people and one was 14,000 people. So every single night you were playing in a loud arena. They were all cheering for you. And even when we were on the road, we typically had more fans than the other team, just because our fans traveled well, or maybe they lived in Connecticut at one point and moved somewhere else. So that was really special. I think Connecticut, what people forget is that we don't have any professional teams in Connecticut. There's no NBA teams. There's no NHL teams. It's just UConn. And this one school in the U.S. that I can say the women's basketball team is much more popular than the men's.
Yeah, and probably better too, but we'll keep that between you and I. How did you get on the radar of the Canadian national women's basketball team?
I played, like I said, with the Ontario provincial team for 2 years. Actually, I didn't get to play my third year with them, and somehow I came up on the radar from there. They knew who I was, and then I went to play cadet. So that was U16 at the time, and then the year after that was U17 for World Championship. So I actually made that team. I was younger than everybody at the time, so I was kind of told that I was just there to get experience and see what it was like being at a national team camp. So I did it. I'm not going to lie to you. It was, for me at that time, at that age, terrifying. Everything about it was just I'm not sure what's happening right now. And I'm around a bunch of people that I didn't really know, and that was a lot for me. And then I made that team. We went to Mexico. We made the World Championships next year. So then I made the next team. And after that, it got kind of strange because there was a camp here after the Olympics in 2012. That team came to Hamilton, actually, to do a training camp. And they said, you know what, you live there. Just come down to training camp and see what it's like again. Get some more experience. I'm like, okay. So I went through that training camp, and they ended up taking me to China at the end of it. And I've been on that team ever since. So that was kind of an accident too.
Yeah, I remember when you burst onto the national consciousness. It was the 2015 Pan Am Games in Toronto. In the gold medal game, it was the Canadian women against the U.S. women. And Canada had never, ever come close to beating the U.S. women on the international stage. And there you were, I'm going to say you were 18 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you scored 33 points to lead Canada to its first ever win. I guess almost 6 years later now, what are your memories of that magical night in Toronto?
Yeah, a lot of them are blurred, to be honest. It's really strange because I remember being so tired before that game and just sitting in warm-ups stretching, because half of us were shooting and half of us were stretching. And I remember when it was my turn to stretch, I was so excited because I just could sit down in the butterfly stretch and just sit there for a while. And I was so tired. I just walked over to the bench and I chugged a Powerade because I'm like, maybe this will help. Maybe I just need some sugar or something. I was excited because I got to play against, at the time I was teammates with Breanna Stewart. Mariah Jefferson and Morgan Tuck, and they were all on that team. So it was fun to play against my teammates. But I also was in the NCAA, so all these players on the U.S. team, I knew them and I knew how good they were. So I was like, well, this is going to be a battle. But to be on home soil, to be in front of my family and my friends, like my grandparents never get to see me play, so to be in front of them, you know, there was just a different feeling to it. And I think once the first shot went in, and I'm pretty sure the first one was an and one, there's a lot of and ones that night, I was like, oh, and I just blanked from there. It's just no thinking. I just kept going, and I don't know what happened, but that probably was one of the biggest, like, scene bursting games of my career.
Yeah, I would say. Well, what's it like to play pro basketball? And I ask you that because for women, and you're exemplary of many, you play a big chunk of the year in the WNBA, and then when that season stops, you go away and play pro elsewhere. Can you talk about your personal experience in that?
Yeah, it's different for women especially. I say it's funny because I'm home now, and I've been home for a month, and this is probably the longest time I've been home in years. You know, we typically, as female athletes on the women's basketball side, we play our 5 or 6 months in WNBA, depending on, obviously, you know, if you get to playoffs or not. And then for me, the last 2 years, I went to Australia, and that's a short season. So I picked a place where your money's not as high, but the season is shorter. You only have one game a week, so it's easier on your body. Great competition, and you're home at least for a month during the year. A lot of girls will go to Turkey and Russia. France is a big one as well. Those seasons actually go through the WNBA season, so you don't have any time at home if you play in those seasons. So for me, I mean, like, it's an interesting way to live. I think, you know, you have to peak at like 3 different moments in the season, so it's like, might as well just always peak, always be good. You don't have a choice. But it's great in terms of experience. Like, I've learned so much about myself, not only on the court and playing against different competition, but as a person. Like, I live on my own in 3 different countries, and trying to figure that out, that's been a lot of fun. So it's definitely a bit of a grind. I live out of a suitcase for a long time, and I'm really ready to have my own place, but it's been really fun.
Your team in Australia is the Canberra Capitals. I believe you won the league title and you were the league MVP this year. But wasn't that the site of the major wildfires this past year?
Yeah, we were the hazardous air. So where we are, it's a valley, and everything around us was burning. So all the air and all the smoke and the flame stuff was coming down onto us. So for a while, it was pretty scary, just in the sense of, you know, my parents were texting me every other day, like, do you want to come home? Do we need to get you on a plane out of there? You know, Australia's an island, so if the whole thing burns, like, you can't get off of it by just walking to another country or driving to another country. So that, you know, was pretty frightening in its own right. We were outside, you know, masks are not a new thing for me in this quarantine. We were outside in masks in the smoke because, you know, you couldn't breathe, and it wasn't very healthy for you to inhale it. We didn't practice a lot there was 2 weeks where we had a lot of no practice today because the smoke would come into the gym and we couldn't breathe while we were running. We canceled the game. And then when we would go on the road, we would fly out if there wasn't a ton of smoke, and we would get up there and you could just see below everything burning. So it was a really scary moment. Obviously, that's a huge part of my life, being there for the last 2 years, and those people and how they've embraced me. So, you know, that was sad to see. Yeah.
On this side of the ocean, you get to play your home games in New York City as a member of the New York Liberty. Madison Square Garden, what's that like for a home office, for a kid from Hamilton?
Yeah, you know, it was really interesting for me personally because when I came into the league, actually, my year we had been moved to Westchester County Center, which is not appropriate for a women's professional basketball team, I would say. And obviously we had some issues with management, and we were up for sale and whatnot. So this year, you know, we got to play 2 games in Madison Square Garden while that was all happening. So that was really amazing for me to be there and just know that it's the mecca of basketball, and you know, walk around hallways where I know like Beyonce's walked. That was a big thing for me. You know, like just being in that setting was amazing. And then obviously, fortunately for us last year, we were actually bought by Joe Tsai, who's actually kind of Canadian, but he owns the Brooklyn Nets. So now we've kind of moved there. And this year we were supposed to, for our first year, play in Barclays Center. And that would have been obviously crazy as well and super exciting. But soon, eventually we'll get there.
Can you tell us about, for people watching, making a living as a woman playing pro basketball It might be getting easier because of a new collective bargaining agreement signed by the WNBA. What's your knowledge of that and how it might make life a bit better?
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction for us. Obviously, it was a monumental change in terms of what we were able to negotiate across the standards. Everything kind of increased. Everything got better. Our standard of living, the way that we travel, not having a roommate on the road is a big difference for everybody. So we had a lot of new things happen there. And then the money side of things also went up. For those who don't really understand it, if you're a veteran in our league, then your money went up 30%. If you're a rookie contract where I am, or if you're still working out of your rookie contract, your money only went up a couple, like 2-3%, not much. But what that is saying now is that as you continue throughout our league, as you continue to play, you're going to be able to not have to go overseas. So our vets, it's the hardest thing for them, especially when you go overseas, your body can't handle it for 9-10 years. You want to be able to play as much as possible. So now our vets don't have to go overseas. Some of them are 30, 35, 36, and that's hard for your body. So they'll be able to stay home and really live off of the wages that we've made. And then there's huge increases in the rookie salaries and whatnot for those who are coming in this year. So I think as we continue to move forward, it's just going to be easier to make a living and not have to go overseas.
I want to ask you a couple more things, then we'll take some questions from some people who are tuned in here. But one is this: the Canadian women's Olympic basketball team was so close to a medal 4 years ago, and there were such great expectations for Tokyo this year. What was your level of disappointment when all that got shelved because of COVID-19?
Yeah, there was a lot of emotions that went through me those 2 days that everything was happening. I found out like everybody else did on Twitter when I was watching TV that night. So, that was kind of disheartening to feel like you just can't go to the Olympics anymore, and completely understand it. Health and wellness and safety of everybody is of the utmost importance. But when you get to the Olympic level, Olympics aren't guaranteed ever until you actually finish that Olympic qualifying tournament. So we go through 5, 6, 7 tournaments over the course of 4 years to try and get there. So you qualify, you get there, and you're like, okay, we did it. Now we can kind of relax a little bit and stop worrying about having to qualify. Now we can worry about just playing well in the Olympics and getting to go there and getting to do that. So that's where it becomes really disheartening that you feel like you can't go. That's an opportunity that's ripped away from you because not every Olympics is guaranteed. I have no idea if this is my last one, or if the last one was my last one, if this one doesn't go on next year. So that's kind of it was really hard to deal with that. But I'm very grateful that the IOC decided that they were going to figure it out and postponed it a year so we could go.
And that'll be hopefully Tokyo 2021.
Hopefully.
As a final one, before we get to some questions, I know it's really important for you. You've got a basketball camp and you're a strong presence in the community where you live. What does it mean to you to be, because you are now to so many young people, a role model in this country?
It means the world to me. It's a big, big responsibility, something that I take, to my heart. And I love being able to interact with people and interact and hear their stories and hear what basketball's done for them, because I feel like this sport has the ability to do so much in terms of help you learn transferable skills, learn confidence, make friends. I think all my friends that I still see nowadays are some part of my sport career, basketball or soccer. So I think that's been something that has been really, really important to me. Obviously, we have Kia Nurse Elite, which runs its AAU programs. And we send a lot of kids to the States every year in the Nike UIBL circuit. So very fortunate for that. And then recently, before the quarantine kind of unfortunately canceled, the Kia Nurse Basketball Academy, I was really looking forward to that. So that gives more kids an opportunity to come. Obviously, we started it in Ontario. The goal is to make it countrywide, so go from province to province and do a session in each province. Just because I think it's important that young women or young men, we open up to both, have the opportunity to be around someone like me, someone that looks just like them, who had probably a similar way to, basketball, similar love for it when I was younger, playing, tournament games, so that they know that they can do this too. Because a lot of times we see people on social media or we see people on TV and we'll never ever meet them. And you think, oh, I can't be that. So I want them to be able to see that, I'm just like you. You can do exactly what I did.
Speaking of kids, here's a question from 7-year-old Kayla Duncan. What's your favorite pregame meal?
Oh, Kayla, good question. I love food. It's a big problem for me. But I would say I always eat a pasta. It's always a red sauce, and it's usually like a penne. And that's usually comes along with a smoothie of some kind. So morning smoothie, and then a penne before the game is usually my go-tos.
Okay, here's a second question. How important would you say that general fitness, things like strength, endurance, and quickness, how important are they for being an elite basketball player?
I think they're really important, especially in the sense of strength and, building weights. Like for me, when I was younger, I started lifting weights when I think I was in like 8th grade. I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this because I don't want to be super strong and brick every shot I take. But it was really about maintaining my body and the strength in different areas of it so that I can prevent as much injury as possible. That's kind of been where I've learned your strength and doing the little boring like ankle band opening, open, close, that stuff's really for your ligaments and making sure that everything that you do moving forward, if you land awkwardly, your body knows how to kind of help you and help make sure that you're okay and that you're healthy. So that's been huge. Quickness, I think you can learn, or if you don't have quickness, you can obviously get around it. There's a lot of people in the WNBA and the NBA who are not quick, but they found a way to make it work, right? So I think that's a little bit of a different one, but definitely think that stuff's all important overall.
A lot of questions of this ilk, but I'll mention William McGinnis, who asks, how do you stay in shape during a coronavirus pandemic?
Yeah, William, it's been tough. For me, I'm not very used to running outside. So I've actually started to take myself outside and run. We have a little park around here that you can kind of just run in a big circle pretty much. So I've been doing that, but I don't do necessarily like 3 miles, kilometers. I'm getting American now. 3-kilometer runs or anything like that. I do like 1 minute running, 45 seconds off 7 times. So I look kind of funny when I run because I run and then I stop and then I run. But that's, as a basketball player, I'm trying to maintain the systems that I use in basketball, which is there's a timeout, there's a foul shot. So I'm not constantly running up and down the court. I know there's breaks in between. And then I've done a lot of lifting. That's pretty much a lot of it. And then sometimes I try to learn TikTok dances, but I don't put them on TikTok. I just learn them so that I'm using some calories.
Private TikTok, right?
Private TikTok.
Exactly. Here's one. What was it like to be named an All-Star Game starter in the WNBA in just your second NBA season?
Ooh, that was crazy. Yeah. The lady obviously called me. One of our people from our offices called me and she said, hey, I just want you to know that you were named to the All-Star team. And I told her, shut up, because I was like, you're lying to me. Like, don't lie to me. And she was like, no, and you're also a starter. And I was like, what is happening right now? I was so grateful to everybody who obviously voted in terms of the fan side. And I know Canada came in strong on that. And then also the players and the coaches who voted. But I think I was really, really happy just in the sense of that was a goal of mine to be on an all-star team at some point. I didn't say, okay, it had to be this season or that season. But it was a surprise. But it was one of the most fun weekends I've ever had.
You got time for 2 more? Can we do 2 more quick ones?
Of course, you can keep going. I'm good.
Okay.
I got lots of time.
Quick question here about mental training and how much of it you do and how important it is. So the focus on the mind, what would you say to that?
I've had to really learn to enjoy that. I would say I'm a very simple person. I grew up with a father who always told me, if you put the ball in the hoop more times than the other person, you win the game. It's not that hard. And that's kind of how I've always taken my approach to the game. But I know there's a mental side to it, and I've learned a lot about it and how important it can be. We're not all born with the same kind of mental toughness or the same mental resilience. Some of us have to develop it later. It's something I had to do. I wasn't super mentally tough when I was young. I would be angry if I missed too many shots or if I wasn't doing something right or if I was making mistakes that I knew I shouldn't make. So there's a lot of different things that I've tried. Meditation is probably the one that I use the most. I did visualization for a bit, but I tend to get distracted when I'm doing that one. So meditation, I feel like, is easier just because it's just me and my thoughts instead of me trying to generate a certain thought. So that's been one of the big things with me mentally. And then I read a lot of books. I tend to read books about, Michael Jordan, Kobe, anything I can find that they used in their mind. But I think what I really figured out actually the other day, LeBron James, I read a quote from him just talking about how everybody's comparing Michael Jordan and his killer instinct. And he said it a long time ago. He said, we don't all kill the same way. We all have a mentality. And even though this is the way Michael's killer instinct comes out, this is the way my killer instinct comes out. It's not the same. It doesn't have to look the same, but I still have the same one. So I think that for me has been like, okay, I've read all these books. I've read all these things that I'm like, this is how these people's mentality is, and it's not the same as mine. So how do I get there? I've changed my mindset to how do I make it appear in how I play and how my mindset is.
11-year-old Jaden Huggan would love to know, what's the one piece of advice you would give to a basketball player of her age, 11 years old?
11. Oh, I can't even remember when I was 11. I would say, obviously, Jaden, just be confident in yourself and be confident in what you do. Another thing that right now I think is crazy in the world, but like, we play basketball because we love it, right? And keep doing that. Keep finding a love in it. Keep playing as long as you can. But don't kind of overdo it to the point where you get tired of it or you get burnt out because of it. We all know that there's an importance in putting in extra work on your own. You go to practice, but you do need to do some stuff outside of it to make sure that, you know, you can be good. And that's okay, but that doesn't mean you got to be in the gym an extra 4 or 5 hours a day trying to put up shots to the point where your body's tired. You don't like basketball anymore. It gets boring to you. Be in there for 20 extra minutes and get some shots up. That's okay. But enjoy it and just keep finding a love in it, because the more you love it, the more the game's going to give back to you.
One last one for you. Do you foresee a day when we'll see a WNBA team in Canada?
Hopefully one day. There's lots of logistics that go behind that, obviously, and lots of stuff that goes on with our league and making sure that the 12 teams we have now are healthy. But I hope that if there is an expansion, that they do see the love that we have for the game here in Canada and bring one this way.
Well, what have you heard, by the way, about going back to your Liberty team? Has there been, I'm sure there's been Zoom meetings galore about when that might happen and what it could look like. What have you heard?
Yeah, not a lot, actually. It's been pretty quiet on our end. Obviously, we hear pretty much everything that the media hears a little bit, like maybe a couple hours before, or a day or two before. But it's been, you know, just us trying to figure out, obviously we had the cancellation of the start of the season, which would have been nowish. But it's just figuring out when it's safe to do so. And because the situation is so changing and because some states are opening up and some aren't, and there's laws in different places, that's where it gets really difficult to figure out what we're going to do. We're going to be in one place. How are we keeping everybody safe? What are we doing with people like me who are international and got to come over there? So it gets pretty interesting in that sense. So we're just waiting it out right now.
Yeah. Well, listen, when things do calm down, we're going to come back and see if we can get you here in Nova Scotia for a really cool, beautiful event. I know the kids would love it, especially the young girls who look up to you so strongly. So listen, thank you for the time tonight. Continued success. It's fun to think that one of the finest basketball players in the world is from Canada. So congrats on everything and best of luck, okay?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys having me on.
All right. See you soon. Bye, everybody.